J-Bone here, and I've got everything you need to know before you watch this weekend's Austrian Grand Prix, including a recap of everything you need to know from this past weekend's Spanish Grand Prix. J-Bone! To kick things off, let's recap the biggest F1 storylines to come from this past weekend's Spanish Grand Prix so that you have all the background info you need before we talk Austria. First and foremost, Max Verstappen is no longer Formula One's fastest driver, even though he's won the last 2 races in a row. Let me explain. Max Verstappen just won this past weekend's Spanish Grand Prix, and 2 weekends before that, he won the Canadian Grand Prix. However, these 2 Max Verstappen wins were absolutely nothing like the Max Verstappen wins that we've become accustomed to. You know, the ones that we saw a record 19 times last year, where Max Verstappen would start on pole, be ahead by so much all race that he was not shown during the broadcast, and then cross the finish line way ahead of P2 before the Dutch national anthem would play to get further burned into your brain. No, these last 2 Max Verstappen Grand Prix wins were far different because Max Verstappen won despite him not being in the fastest car on the grid. Red Bull had the fastest car in F1 for the last 2 years straight, but McLaren very clearly have the fastest car in F1 right now. This is evidenced by the fact that McLaren would have won in Canada if it weren't for that karmic safety car that took the lead away from McLaren driver Lando Norris, and they also would have won in Spain if Lando Norris did not botch his race start and get stuck behind George Russell. In order to be Formula One's fastest driver, you have to be a top driver in a top car, and while I do believe that Max Verstappen is the best driver in Formula One, which I must note his well-deserved win in Spain in the second fastest car on the grid helps prove, I believe that the combination of Lando Norris's top-tier skill and the McLaren car's first place pace right now makes Lando Norris the current fastest driver in F1. If you need some evidence for this take, just look at Lando's absolutely incredible, stonking pole lap in Spanish Grand Prix qualifying, where he beat Max to pole position despite Max receiving a tow from his Red Bull teammate Checo Perez. Who do you think is the fastest driver in F1 right now when you consider both driver skill and their car? Let me, J-Bone, know in the comments. Go comment right now. Now, let's break down the 2024 F1 Spanish Grand Prix's full finishing order. Max Verstappen won the Spanish Grand Prix with one of his most masterful drives in recent years, where he did not put a foot wrong all day. This incredible driving allowed Max to hold off Lando Norris despite the Red Bull car being slower than the McLaren car, and it served as a great reminder to all of us that Max Verstappen is a world-class driver and not just a car merchant. Lando Norris took second place in Spain with the fastest lap as well. It would have almost certainly been a race win for Lando, his second of his career and second of the season, given his race pace, except he had a bad race start that led to him getting overtaken by Max Verstappen and, more importantly, George Russell into turn 1, with Lando eventually losing so much time getting stuck behind George that he could not pass Max before the end of the race despite being in a faster car. Lewis Hamilton rounded out the podium in 3rd place to achieve his first podium of the 2024 season and also his first podium since the Mexico City Grand Prix in October of last year, ending the longest podium drought of Lewis Hamilton's career. P4 went to George Russell, whose race will be remembered more for how he prevented Lando from winning and for that awesome battle he had with Lando than for finishing in P4. P5 and P6 went to the Ferraris of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz respectively, but not respectfully, as they came together at turn 1, which really angered Carlos Sainz. P7 went to Oscar Piastri, who had a very down weekend by his standards and relative to his McLaren teammate Lando Norris. P8 went to Checo Perez, who had a very down weekend by everyone in the world's standards, considering Checo finished outside the top 7 for the 4th race in a row to continue his wild cold streak. You regret giving him that contract extension yet, Red Bull? P9 went to Pierre Gasly, who was on to finish a season-best P8 before he got passed by Checo on the final lap of the race. P10 went to Esteban Ocon to give Alpine their second double points finish in a row that has propelled the French team ahead of Haas to P7 in the World Constructors' Championship. P11 went to Nico Hülkenberg. P12 sadly went to Fernando Alonso, who had a very forgettable home Grand Prix. P13 was Joe. P14 Stroll. P15 Danny Rick. P16 Bottas. P17 K-Mag. P18 Albon. P19 Yuki. And P20 American hero Logan Sargent. If you find yourself wanting to be more productive with your free time, you need to check out my sponsor, Masterclass. With Masterclass, you can learn from the best to become your best. Masterclass is the only streaming platform where you can learn and grow with over 200 plus of the world's best. And you can access Masterclass on your phone, computer, smart TV, or even in audio mode. If you want a winning mindset like Lewis Hamilton, and who doesn't, to cook like Gordon Ramsay, and also who doesn't, or to become a streamer like Ninja, again, who doesn't? Why would you not learn directly from those people? Those classes and so many more are available for just $10 a month, which gets you an annual membership with Masterclass, granting you unlimited access to every instructor. I've been on a big baking kick lately, and thanks to Joanne Chang's Bake Like a Pro class, I just made the best chocolate chip cookies of my life. Look at those. You're gonna tell me you don't want those? I know you do. Don't lie. Right now, our listeners get an additional 15% off any annual membership at masterclass.com/formula. That's 15% off at masterclass.com/formula. Masterclass.com/formula. It's right there behind my head. To cap off my Spanish Grand Prix recap, we need to talk about how my 3 bona fide Spanish Grand Prix race predictions turned out because I am so upset. I predicted that the podium would consist of 3 different constructors, and ding ding, J-Bone got that one right. J-Bone! I told you all that F1 is so even at the top right now that having 3 different constructors on the podium made perfect sense, and I was dead on. I also predicted that Checo Perez would not finish in the top 5 for the 4th race in a row, and ding ding, J-Bone also got that one right. J-Bone! J-Bone! Checo's skid continues as I predicted it would, and he's now finished outside the top 7 in the last 4 Grand Prix, which is absurd considering his contract extension and the fact that his teammate won 3 of those last 4 Grand Prix. And my 3rd race prediction was that Mercedes would score more points in Spain than any other team. The 2 Mercedeses finished P3 and P4, giving them an average finishing position of P3.5, which made them the team with the highest average finishing position in Spain, which I should have predicted instead. What's more, as of the beginning of the final tire stint, Mercedes were on to score 28 points since Lewis Hamilton had the fastest lap, which, if that result held, would have had them finish the race as the standalone team with more points than any other team, making my prediction come 100% true. Then, Lando Norris took the fastest lap point from Lewis, which, if that result held, would have tied Mercedes with Red Bull for the team with the most points at 27, making my prediction come 50% true because they would have tied, which I 100% would have spun in my favor to say I went 3 for 3 by citing a completely made up average finishing position tiebreaker. But then, jerkwad Checo Perez passed Pierre Gasly on the final lap of the race to make Red Bull the standalone team with the most Spanish Grand Prix points at 29, making my prediction come 0% true when I was this close to going 3 for 3. This close. Either way, that puts me at 16 for 31 for the season thus far with my predictions, which puts me nicely above 500. And guess what, folks? I'm going to follow up this narrow 3 for 3 miss when I give you all my eagerly anticipated Austrian Grand Prix race predictions at the end of this video, so make sure you stay tuned all the way to the end. Also, be sure you're subscribed to my channel so that you can get my F1 updates all season long, and leave a like on this video so YouTube likes me more. I'm trying to get 2,000 likes on this video, okay? If you could please help me out. J-Bone! Now, it's time to look ahead and talk about this weekend's Austrian Grand Prix. The Formula 1 Austrian Grand Prix takes place this weekend at the Red Bull Ring in Spielberg, Styria, Austria, Europe, Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Universe. And hold on to your Tyrolean hats, folks, because the Austrian Grand Prix weekend marks the return of everyone's favorite, completely not controversial at all Formula 1 thing, F1 Sprint. The Austrian Grand Prix Sprint weekend starts this Friday, June 28th, which will consist of free practice 1 and sprint qualifying, which will determine the grid for the sprint race. Saturday, June 29th, will consist of the sprint race and Grand Prix qualifying, which will determine the grid for the Grand Prix. And Sunday, June 30th, will consist of the Grand Prix. The Austrian Grand Prix's Red Bull Ring is one of the most unique and recognizable circuits in all of Formula 1. In terms of layout, the circuit contains just 10 corners, the fewest of any circuit on the entire F1 calendar, and tied for the 6th fewest turns on any circuit in the history of Formula 1. But what it lacks in turns, the Red Bull Ring overcompensates for via DRS zones. There are 3 DRS activation zones at the Red Bull Ring, and they take up like most of the circuit. And each one of those DRS activation zones is serviced by its own DRS detection line, making the Red Bull Ring tied with numerous other circuits for having the most DRS detection lines. Oh yeah, and all of these DRS zones and how short the circuit is also make the Red Bull Ring have the shortest lap time on the entire calendar. Additionally, the Red Bull Ring resides in Austria's beautiful Styrian Mountains, which makes it one of the most picturesque motorsport circuits on planet Earth, and also one of the most elevation-changey 63.5 meters or 208 feet separate the Red Bull Ring's highest and lowest points, which puts it only behind Spa in terms of roller coaster ridiness for drivers. Now, here are a couple interesting storylines to follow for this weekend's 2024 Austrian Grand Prix. First, McLaren F1 team driver Lando Norris is about to get a win during the Austrian Grand Prix race weekend, and here's why. Let's get back to basics here. To get a win in Formula 1, you need a driver in good form, a fast car, Tracy Chapman style, and a circuit that agrees with said driver and car. And all of that applies to Lando Norris this weekend in Austria. Lando Norris is currently in the best form of his career with 6 podiums this season, 5 of which have come in his last 6 starts, including a win. This is a career best run for Lando and has helped propel him to second place in the World Drivers' Championship for the first time ever. Driver in good form? Check. And Lando's McLaren car? It's just proven itself as the fastest car on the grid in each of the last 2 Grand Prix, with Lando only missing out on back-to-back wins because of a poorly timed safety car in Canada and one single mistake in Spain. Fast car? Check. All that remains here to serve as evidence for Lando snagging a win this weekend is the Austrian Grand Prix's Red Bull Ring being a circuit set up well for Lando and his McLaren, and I believe it is. Why? Because last season's Austrian Grand Prix marked the introduction of what turned out to be McLaren's game-changing upgrade to Lando's car, and that upgrade immediately shot Lando up the pecking order to a P4 result at the Red Bull Ring last season. McLaren have spent the last year building on the concept of that exact upgrade that had success at the Red Bull Ring in 2023, so it stands to reason that McLaren very well could find even more success there this season. And all that is why I believe Lando Norris will win either the Grand Prix, the sprint race, or both this weekend in Austria. Next, want to hear a depressing sports story? If not, skip ahead. But if so, keep watching. This depressing Formula 1 story starts where most depressing F1 stories do, with a USA-based Haas F1 team, America's only United States-based F1 team for now. And the subject of the story is their driver, Nico Hülkenberg, who, like his team, is no stranger to being the subject of depressing F1 stories. After all, Nico Hülkenberg holds the all-time F1 records for the most Formula 1 race starts without a win, and the even more depressing record of the most Formula 1 race starts without a podium, both belonging to him since he's never been on an F1 Grand Prix podium in any of his 213 race starts, and those go all the way back to 2010. Fortunately for Nico, the story that's the subject of this video is less depressing than that at least. Okay, I'll spit it out already. Formula 1 only awards points to the top 10 finishers in a race, and Haas driver Nico Hülkenberg has now finished in 11th place in 4 of the last 5 races and 5 of the last 7. Considering Nico DNF'd in Monaco, his last 4 race finishes have all seen him take the checkered flag 1 measly position away from finishing in the points. All that hard work for nothing. Hopefully Nico's 11 streak ends in Austria, because boy, does he deserve some points after all that, and also after all the other stuff in his career. A few other things that you should be paying attention to this race weekend. First, the 2 Ferraris came together in Spain, and both drivers are not happy about it, so it will be very fun to see if Sainz and Leclerc patched things up this week, or if they're gonna butt heads again in Austria. Next, Alpine F1 team just hired Flavio Briatore as an advisor, which I honestly might have to make a full video about soon because it is such an insane move for them. In the meantime, just go to his Wikipedia page and see why I think this move is so bizarre. Additionally, I am very interested to see how Mercedes look in Austria after being right there at the top for teams in both Canada and Spain and continually closing the gap to Red Bull and McLaren. A huge shout out to my sponsor, Shopify. Shopify is the best all-in-one commerce platform capable of handling your business's complexity no matter how big you grow. Step up to Shopify and harness the best converting checkout and the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands like Ruggable and Allbirds. Why spend time trying to build an online store with someone besides Shopify when Shopify stores convert the best? You shouldn't be. That's a crazy thing to do if you're doing that. One thing I love about Shopify is that it integrates with YouTube, which just goes to show that they are so forward thinking. Stop leaving sales on the table, switch your business to Shopify, and discover why millions trust Shopify as their all-in-one commerce platform to build, grow, and run their business. They are such a great company, and I'm so happy they sponsor the show because I love them. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/fbone. That's all lowercase, 1 month for just $1 at shopify.com/fbone. Shopify.com/FBONEFBone. Now the moment you've all been waiting for. Here are my 3 bona fide race predictions for the 2024 F1 Austrian Grand Prix that are all going to come true, or my name isn't J-Bomb. My first race prediction is that Lando Norris will win either the Austrian Grand Prix, the Austrian Grand Prix sprint race, or both. McLaren have proven to the world in each of the last 2 races that they have the fastest car on the grid. When you pair that with how well Lando performed in Austria last year, placing P4 in the first ever race with their game-changing upgrade package that kicked off this run of solid form for them, I love Lando to win something in Austria. And if Max wins either race, I'm going to claim collusion since Red Bull winning at the Red Bull Ring is highly suspicious. My second race prediction is that Charles Leclerc will finish on the podium at the Austrian Grand Prix. Leclerc has absolutely feasted at the Red Bull Ring these past 2 seasons, finishing P2 there last year and winning there 2 years ago in what was his most recent win before he just won in Monaco. Because of this, I like Charles Leclerc to get back on the podium in Austria after missing out on the podium each of the last 2 races. My third race prediction is that Haas will finish in the points at the Austrian Grand Prix. After a hot start to the season, hot spelled H-A-A-T, Haas have now not finished in the points in any of the last 4 Grand Prix, and actually they just dropped down to P8 in the World Constructors' Championship in Spain after Alpine had a double points finish there. However, when I think Austria, I think Haastria, because I will never forget when they had a double points finish of their own at the Red Bull Ring in 2022, with Mick Schumacher finishing P6 and Kevin Magnussen finishing P8. This has convinced me that Haas and the Red Bull Ring just get along, and when you pair that with how Nico Hülkenberg has ended up just 1 spot outside of the points in the last 4 races he's finished, I love Haas points this weekend. It might just be my Haas delusion syndrome talking, but I love Haas, okay? They're gonna do it. Haas points in Austria. And last but not least, here's my prediction for the top 5 finishers in the Austrian Grand Prix with zero reasoning nor explanation. P5, Carlos Sainz. P4, Oscar Piastri. P3, Charles Leclerc. P2, Max Verstappen. And P1, Lando Norris. Special shout out to my top YouTube channel members, Joe Max's number 1 hater Snow, Brian Linton, Wolf Loves Racing, Wavalophagus, and David Hake. Mash that join button just below this video to get your name shouted out right here in future videos. Until next time, folks, J-Bomb! J-Bomb!